Thank you, and welcome, everybody. I'd like to call this meeting to order. I'm going to ask Vice Chair John Ports to call the roll, please.
Vinnie Picciarelli.
Present.
Lindsay Mosca is not available. Dee Galston.
Yes.
Heidi Perkins.
Yes.
Lori Cable.
Present.
Steve Magoon.
Here.
Tom Tracy.
Here.
Paul Anastasi.
Here.
Kelly Crowbaum's not available. Leo Patterson.
Here.
Mark Sideris.
Yes, John Ports.
Present.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is approval of meeting minutes. Can I get a motion on the meeting minutes of August 5th and August 10th?
If we could just maybe take August 5th first, Mr. Chairman. There's just one correction. It shows, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes with, it shows Kelly is absent. That should be changed to show that Kelly arrived at 6:50 p.m. So motion to approve the minutes as amended.
I think there's one more change there. Farther down in the question area, I think it's named as Anne Marie Clinton. I think it's supposed to be Clunan.
Yes.
So unless Anne Marie's going to make a run in November, I think it's Clunan.
Thank you very much for those. Are there any other changes? Can I get a second?
Second.
Are there any other changes? Roll call, please.
Dee Galston.
Yes.
Heidi Perkins.
Yes.
Lori Cable.
Yes.
Steve Magoon.
Yes.
Tom Tracy.
Yes.
Paul Anastasi.
Yes.
Leo Patterson.
Yes.
Vinnie Picciarelli.
Yes.
Mark Sideris.
Yes, John Ports.
Yes.
Thank you. Can I get a motion on the minutes of August 10th?
Mr. Chairman, make a motion to adopt the minutes of August 10th with their two corrections. And the first is item 2. It's actually should show that I made the motion to on the minutes and it was seconded by Tom Tracy. And then under item 3, the approval of invoices, the motion was missing on that. So it should show that I made a motion to approve the invoices totaling $2,432,433.11. It was seconded by Tom Tracy, and that it was recorded as a unanimous roll call.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or corrections? Can I get a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please, Sean.
Heidi Perkins.
Yes.
Lori Cable.
Yes.
Steve Magoon.
Yes.
Tom Tracy.
Yes.
Paul Anastasi.
Yes.
Leo Patterson.
Yes.
Dee Galston.
Yes.
Vinnie Picciarelli.
Yes.
Mark Sideris.
Yes, John Ports.
Yes.
Okay, we'll move on to the next item, which is invoices. And I guess we can have Tom go over these. And if we miss anything, Vivian will follow up. Tom?
I do have them listed, Chairman, on the next slide, if you'd like.
Yes, please. Tom, would you read those off and make sure we're...
Sure. So we have first invoice is Hill International for $93,910. There's 3 invoices for AI3 Architects, which is $65,840.08 for basic services, $561 for extra services, reimbursable expenses of $19,475. Freight Builders is for $3,808,875.85. UTS is for $3,995. Colliers International is for $3,861, and Beacon International Solutions for $440 for a grand total of invoices for approval tonight of $3,996,957.93.
Thank you. Can I get a motion on the invoices, please?
Mr. President, I make a motion that we approve the invoices totaling $3,996,957.93.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? Roll call, please.
Lori Cable,
Yes.
Steve Magoon,
Yes.
Tom Tracy,
Yes.
Paul Anastasi,
Yes.
Leo Patterson,
Yeah. Yes.
Heidi Perkins,
Yes.
Edie Galston,
Yes.
Vinnie Picciarelli,
Yes.
Mark Sideris,
Yes, John Ports.
yes.
Thank you.
The next item on our agenda are change orders. These are 3 change orders that we would like to bring to the school building committee's attention. The first change order is for soil remediation as well as removal, and smaller subsequent changes for, I believe we separated this one out for Cuniff. We separated these for change order 1 is related to Cuniff, change order 2 for Hosmer. In reviewing change order 1 and 2, we did provide an executive summary to the school building committee outlining exactly the actions and steps we had taken in order to negotiate, discuss, push back. It has been a month-long correspondence between Brate Brothers, W.R. French, and ourselves to...
Vivian,
Yes.
could you please, for the general public that doesn't have these documents yet or may not, just go over what this is and maybe where we started, please?
Absolutely, and I'll ask Scott to join in with the conversation since he had more firsthand experience with Brate Brothers and French in dealing with the soil.
Sure. The change orders 1, 2, and 3 all involve relatively small amounts. And I think, as Vivian points out, those are explained in the executive summary. There are a couple of big ticket items in change order 1 and change order 2, meaning for the Cuniff and for the Hosmer, that involve the same thing, involves soils associated with differing subconditions that are significant amounts and probably warrant a little bit of discussion. As the chairman points out, these 2 items, which total about $490,000, began as claims from the site subcontractor of well over $1 million. And for the past 4 months, we've been negotiating those amounts down. So essentially from well over $1 million initially to under $500,000 now. And they warrant some explanation on both the Cuniff and Hosmer sites. When we first began excavation on the sites and began soil characterization, meaning analyzing the composition of the soils on each of the sites, we have a licensed site professional working on behalf of the town that was sending those samples off to a lab. And just as a point of information, anytime you remove soil from a site and deposit it on another site, and in this case, we're removing a significant amount of soil from both the Cuniff and the Hosmer sites, you're required to have a sample for every 500 cubic yards. And in this case, we're talking about 50,000 cubic yards. So you can imagine we had to do a lot of sampling on the sites. And early on in the sampling, we realized that although there was nothing particularly wrong with the soils, they did contain several metals and minerals that are naturally occurring and inherent in the soils in Watertown, but that require a premium to dispose of them. in other locations. So we began negotiating with the site contractor regarding an appropriate value for the premium associated with disposing of those soils. And in the end, as I mentioned, we've reduced this down to what is a very fair price, we think, for disposal of those soils. And we've also requested that the general contractor remove all of his markup associated with this change order, all of his overhead and profit. And this is all after significantly cutting the initial amount on the claim that was put forward. And so at this point in time, we think it's a fair value, and particularly, even though it's a significant value, good news considering we're completely out of the ground. This covers all the excavation, all the disposal that will occur on both the Cuniff and the Hosmer sites. So you can see the amounts in those change orders. For the Cuniff site, it was about $182,000 for the disposal of those soils. And then on the Hosmer site, which is obviously much bigger, it was a $307,855 was the final negotiated amount, again, for the disposal of those soils.
The only difference between the two change orders is that in change order one, where pertaining to the Cuniff, we do have a credit of a final asbestos quantities, that a credit of 78,000, a little over. And we do not have that number yet for the Hosmer, and that should be forthcoming once we're completed with that task.
Oh, I should have, thank you, Vivian. I should have highlighted that, because the two things we fear when we start a project are what we're going to find under the ground and what we're going to find hidden in the walls. And the underground issue is resolved now. And with regard to what we found inside the walls, on both the Cuniff and the Hosmer, we found much less asbestos than we had anticipated. So a significant credit, as Vivian points out, a credit of almost $80,000 on the Cuniff. And then, although we haven't tallied the final value on the Hosmer, that's going to be a very significant credit also for the asbestos abatement that's been done thus far at the Hosmer.
Lori, you have your hand raised.
Yes, Scott, find less asbestos at the high school too. But I am wondering, can you explain a little bit about why we didn't catch this when we did the bore samplings early on?
We knew that certainly there was some composition of the soils. The borings that we did were for geotechnical purposes. We did do some soil sampling at that point in time, but a lot of the soils that we're finding that were rich in minerals and metals were actually underneath the building footprint and were underneath the parking lot areas where we just didn't do any sampling for obvious reasons. And as an example, on the Hosmer site, in order to do the appropriate number of soil characterization samples on that site, we dug 80 test pits during construction, both before the building was demolished and after the building was demolished. So there's just no way to get that level of sampling until you actually start to remove pavement, building, etc.
Are there any other questions at this point on these change orders?
I haven't gone into giving a little bit more detail
Oh,
on.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
3. So change order 3 is in for our movers. We had provided an allowance amount, excuse me, of close to 500 boxes for moving, knowing that there might be a need for additional boxes, and we had asked for a per unit price, and we did need, for 1,500 boxes. So we did need almost double the amount of boxes at $3 plus. And this cost is for not only the additional boxes, as well as some bubble wrapping for a lot of the musical instruments and additional tape needed.
Sorry for interrupting you, Vivian.
Oh, that's quite all right. I just wanted to make sure everyone knew what change order 3 was. It's a smaller amount in comparison, but didn't want it to get lost. Vincent, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just, in the package of material you sent us, there was only 2 change orders. There was no documentation on change order 3.
The change order 3 is more of an amendment since it's not, we have their contract written very differently than we have Brate Brothers. So this one would be an amendment number 1 to their existing contract, since theirs are more of unit prices, and plus their entire contract includes moving back into Hosmer as well as Cuniff and moving out of Lowell project.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve the change orders as presented?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve change orders number 1, 2, and 3, totaling $449,515.96.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please, John.
Steve Magoon,
Yes.
Tom Tracy,
Yes.
Paul Anastasi,
Yes.
Leo Patterson,
Yes.
Lori Cable,
Yes.
Heidi Perkins,
Yes.
Edie Galston,
Yes.
Vinnie Picciarelli,
Yes.
Mark Sideris.
Yes, John Ports.
Yes.
Next.
Thank you, everyone. If Scott, you wouldn't mind advancing. We get to my favorite part of the presentation, the executive summary. I know that the screen is a little bit difficult to read, but I hope that all of you had an opportunity to look at this in advance. I'll give you the highlights. If you just drive by the Cuniff as late as today, you will notice that the picture doesn't even look anything like it. There's constant movement and constant change on both properties and both projects, but more significantly on Cuniff. So I'll start with Cuniff first. The foundations have been completed. We did receive structural steel on Monday, was the first load, and we're very excited since erection process has begun. We are also continuing to remove the on-site fill or the soil, the wall of soil, and off the property. That was a joke. And continuing to work on utilities. We're planning, so mark your calendars, please. We're planning a topping off ceremony scheduled for the week of the 12th. We will provide a few days in advance an opportunity for everyone to come by and sign, those appropriate to sign the steel beam.
That's the 12th of October.
Yes, 12th of October. Coming up shortly, before you know it. We will provide some procedures and guidelines on timeframes so that you can join us on site to have an opportunity to sign the beam in advance to the topping off party in order to encourage a little bit of physical distancing among everybody. Moving on to Hosmer, we're continuing to complete the excavation for the foundation work. Currently, we're forming, reinforcing, and placing concrete. I'll be happy to report that the parking lot along Boylston Street has been paved, striped, and it has been turned back over to the town for use during winter conditions by the residents. And structural steel for Hosmer is scheduled the week of October 12th. The topping off party will be before the Thanksgiving holiday, most likely early November. But as we get closer to the time, I'll give you more updates and details. As far as the financial aspects, we have included the invoices in advance to the approvals for tonight into the figures here so that you have a better understanding of where we stand financially. However, the change orders are not inclusive of this. We waited for the change orders to be approved, and you will see those reflected on next month's executive summary. Are there any questions I can answer? We could go through the schedule if needed, but I kind of gave the high-level highlights of all of them.
Impressive progress photo for Lowell. Boy, that really,
Isn't it?
It's all done. It's done.
It is, and you know, it will soon enough look exactly like that.
And Vivian, let's get that question that's on Q&A and go over what we've been doing to mitigate this issue.
Absolutely. So we have a question from Anne Marie Clunin. Related to Hosmer, neighbors have reported issues with mud, dirt issues. Some of the issue has been addressed, but we are still seeing Mount Auburn Street lined with dirt. It turns about 4 feet out on each side. Thank you, Anne Marie. And we do have a mitigation plan. As you know, there has been a lot more activity as far as removal of soil off the property, if you haven't noticed. There's a lot of trucks, more closer to maybe 10 even. Last week, 60 loads came off the property, and we're continuing to do so was being done so in preparation for steel to arrive on Monday. We will be continuing to truck as much as 10 loads per day. With that, we have asked Brate Brothers to join us tonight, and they could speak to it a little bit more in depth. But we have asked for street cleaning to be increased. On a daily basis, they will spend half the time at Cuniff and the other half at Hosmer, going back and forth between both sites to ensure that Mount Auburn as well as Boylston Street, where the trucks come in and out, are clean and swept, as well as the area for Cuniff. I do have TJ on the line with us. So TJ, I asked for you to elaborate a little bit more than what I've given.
Vivian, before you go to TJ, if I may, I just for the committee to understand that these issues were brought to the attention of the building inspector, and the building inspector required some of what you're hearing this evening to be increased, and Tom Finnegan was able to get Brate Brothers to submit the plans to the building inspector for his approval as to how we're approaching this. So the committee needs to know that there have been a lot of discussions about this, but there's also a plan in place that TJ can go over in more detail. But the committee needs to make sure that they're aware that, you know, there's many people are on top of this. TJ.
Absolutely. We have been trying to be very responsive to all of the neighbors, making sure that we have contact with them, and as soon as any complaint has been heard, we are quick to respond to it. TJ, I'll ask you to unmute yourself.
Okay. Evening all. Can you guys all hear me okay?
Excellent.
Yes.
Okay. So I guess we'll start at the Cuniff project. Obviously, we had some dirt and mud make its way down to Warren Street. What we've found at both projects is, as Vivian mentioned, we have been taking an extremely large amount of trucks on and off site on a daily basis to try to remove this mountain of soil that we have. We've noticed an uptick in the amount of dirt that's made its way to the road in the days after or in the days during a rain event. So at Cuniff, what we've done is we've readdressed the entrance, the construction entrance, with some 3-inch stone up the entrance and extended that into the site. That should mitigate some of the dirt and mud that gets on the tires. We've tried to extend that further into the site, and we've increased the street sweeping and put the street sweeping company on notice that in the event of a rain event, we're going to need you more often, and we're going to need to hit the road more consistently. And so that's what we're doing at Cuniff. At Hosmer, we're doing that same thing. However, the site conditions at Hosmer allow us to implement a wheel wash. So when we have rain events and when the site gets muddy, what we'll do is we'll put a laborer with a hose close to the entrance of the building to spray the tires, get any of that mud off. We'll still implement the street sweeper. The reason that we can't implement that strategy at Cuniff is the entrance goes uphill, and the fear would be that if you implement that wheel wash at the top there, you would get runoff down the hill, and you might make the issue worse at Cuniff. So we've tried to tidy up the construction road inside the site and increase the amount of street sweeping that we do during the day, and just try to be more proactive about looking ahead at the weather. If there's any other questions, or if I didn't touch on something, let me know.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your efforts in working with the community and the residents who have been, making some, bringing these to our attention. Are there any questions from the committee? Seeing none, Vivian, if you'd like to move on.
Thank you, Chairman. Turn it over to John, as well as to Scott, to review the Sustainability Subcommittee updates.
I'll just briefly go through what we went through with the Sustainability Subcommittee tonight. We reported to them that the town is responsible for filing an interconnection application with Eversource for the solar array at both the Cuniff and the Hosmer. And on the town's behalf, and in conjunction with Lori's support, we have, and our engineers, we have prepared those applications, and we're now in the process of back and forth with Eversource to get their approval. As you can imagine, when you connect a power source as large as this to the Eversource grid, you certainly have to have their approval. You can't get that approval until you have a completely designed system and know who's going to be installing it. So it was the appropriate time to file those. So we've filed those, and we'll be continuing in communication with Eversource with regard to those. We also reported to the Sustainability Subcommittee that as of July 2020, so just approximately 2 months ago, Mass Department of Energy released the most recent requirements for their SMART program, the incentive program that's been discussed all along as being very valuable to the town, particularly if the town owns these PV arrays, which they will, has provided a new requirement where for systems as large as the Hosmer, they are requiring that we have at least 25% battery storage on that type of site. So we have begun the process of redesigning the Hosmer system to incorporate that kind of battery storage. And we anticipate, this would obviously be a change order for the electrical subcontractor at this point in time. And we anticipate that that has a value of somewhere around $500,000 plus or minus. We don't have a specific price proposal from them yet, but we just want to let the Sustainability Subcommittee and the Building Committee know that in order to keep the town eligible for the SMART incentives, that we are processing that. And at some point in time in the near future, the committee, the subcommittee and the committee will have to consider the approval of that change order. Just as an aside and as a reminder, the report that the town's consultant produced when they were analyzing ownership of the PV system versus a power purchasing agreement, I believe in that report, they suggested that the SMART incentives for the Hosmer could be somewhere between $2 and $2.7 million. So clearly it's in the town's best interest to comply with those requirements and achieve the battery storage and therefore achieve the incentives. The other item, we just updated the sustainability subcommittee that the Coniff and Hosmer, after the lead submittal for our entire design documentation is at about 68 points with no guarantee of a lot of those points because a lot of those still fall in construction and then product submittals and the final approved products. But that's a pretty good target to be at right now because we're trying to hit a minimum of 60 points to achieve gold. And that certainly positions us to have a good possibility of doing that. So that's just a quick highlight of the items we reviewed with the subcommittee. I would defer to John for any additional highlighting we may need to have around those items.
No, thank you, Scott. I think that covered the ground. The one additional comment I would make is that when we did talk about the option or the consideration, would there be benefits to a battery storage system for the Coniff? And that would, as Scott pointed out to us, that would also involve a significant, even more significant redesign. However, I think at this point, Lori was going to work with the crisis action team to kind of have a little better understanding if there are any benefits that we should be aware of to the town in general to have that battery storage capability at the Coniff. And I think she'll report back on that, but there's no action at this point. But I think there was an interest in exploring that idea a little bit further. So that's it. Other than that, I think, as Scott said, there will be a change order that will come at some point here in the near future.
Questions from the committee?
I do not see any hand raised.
Okay, thank you. Next item.
There is a hand raised from the attendees.
I'm going to go ahead and allow
Chris, I'll allow you to speak if you wouldn't mind, please unmuting yourself. Chris?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
I think I might have raised my hand premature. I had a question about the site of the Coniff School. Would these come later or now?
Go ahead. Time as any.
We're concerned about the solar panels up against the property at 104 Chapman Street. And they seem to be sprung upon us kind of late in the project. They weren't there in the early developments. And we have some concerns about them. I was wondering if you could give us some elevations maybe of them and tell us we're going to be looking straight at them over our fence. Anybody have that answer?
I don't have the site plan, but it would be helpful to understand which portion. Would that be the portion that where the sort of 6-foot white vinyl fence abuts the rear of the Coniff?
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
Sure. So the grade, as I'm sure you know, is fairly steep and it changes even along the 6-foot white fence that's along the property line there. But the approximate midpoint of that fence is at the base of the fence is about 120 feet. The elevation is about 120 feet. And so the wall, the retaining wall that wraps around the parking lot in that area is at about 116. There's a fence on top of that that goes to about 120-ish. And then the photovoltaic array sits at about sits relatively flat at about 120, elevation 122. So it would, the PV array would be about 2 feet, and I'm working in averages here because the grade changes across that, but would be about 2 feet above the bottom of your fence, so 4 feet below the top of your fence. So I think that in relationship to the white vinyl fence there, the PV array should be a few feet below the top of that fence. And it sits relatively, that particular photovoltaic array, in order to stay very low, is mounted very low to the ground and is almost flat.
All right, we're still not happy about it, but I guess it is what it is. It just seemed to be a late thing to be on the plans. There was no pictures of it before. It was all parking lot. And we're just concerned about it being right there.
Thank you.
All right,
Any
thanks.
other member of the public wish to be heard at this point? Please raise your hand. I don't see any. Vivian, do you see anyone?
No, I do not, Chairman.
Did you check anything on the email?
I just had an opportunity to look on the email while the gentleman was speaking, and I did not receive any new emails.
Okay. Are there any other questions from the committee? I guess, are we moving on to the last item, which is adjournment? Okay, before we move on, I just want to say there are a number of people that have gone above and beyond for this project, and a lot of them are on this committee. But tonight I want to recognize someone who's been helping us out quite a bit. Pollyanna Stacy has been going to both site meetings every week to be on site with Tom, and I want to take this opportunity to thank him and appreciate your efforts. Paul has been all over all of these change order items and everything that we're doing, and I think he's also going above and beyond volunteering, and I want to thank him for that at this meeting because I'm not sure we've been able to do that yet. Paul, thank you.
And if I may, Chairman, I'd like to add that it's been a pleasure having him among the team.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, not to pile on too much, but Paul, as I think everybody is aware, and certainly there's a real breadth of expertise and professionals all across this committee that have helped out in many phases. But Paul has been the person on the ground representing the town in many, many school projects, both in Watertown and in other towns. And he has been a really valuable resource for us and sort of constantly reminding us of the things to be thinking about during the construction process, and particularly the things that impact facilities and the ownership of these buildings long-term. And so it's been very helpful and refreshing to have him as part of those meetings.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you all very much. I appreciate the kind words. I will tell you, I do kind of look forward to every Thursday morning to our trailer meetings and our spirited discussions.
Spirited, that's the perfect word for it.
Thanks for being the eyes and ears for the committee as well,
You're welcome.
and the community. Can I get a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second,
Roll call, please.
Tom Tracy,
yes.
Paul Anastasi. Paul,
Yes, I'm here still.
Leo Patterson,
Yes.
Steve Magoon,
Yes.
Lori Cable,
Yes.
Heidi Perkins,
Yes.
Edie Galston,
Yes.
Vinnie Picciarelli,
Yes.
Mark Sideris.
Yes, John Ports.
Yes.
Thank you all very much. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Aye.
Thanks.
Thank you.